Hello there, all you great people. I think I better explain this video because a lot of people seems to be having a massive misconception about what it's about. And yes, I just got some coffee and morning hair. And again, I have to explain the video to someone on another person's channel that have talked about my video. So I'm going to explain it. I gave up on the Linux desktop after 25 years. Let's read the description. After using Linux as a desktop for a long time and as my only desktop for over 10 years, I always had to compromise more and more and more just so I could say I run Linux. And in the end, it really don't matter. And I came to the conclusion that Linux have had over 30 years to make a dent in the desktop market, and yet here we are. Where in this or paragraph, or where in this title, or where in the video did I explain or say that I'm not going to run Linux anymore? Nowhere. I run Linux daily. I use Linux via Synology and stuff like that at work. What this video is about, or that video is about, not what I'm making right now, was about that I don't think Linux would ever be more than it is today. So all of the people that run out there like good little minions and yell and scream about Linux desktop and the year of the Linux desktop will come, no. That's what I've stopped believing in. I stopped believing in, well, the Linux desktop. I stopped believing that will ever be a thing. I didn't talk anything about Linux on IoT devices, you know, forks of Linux like the Android systems and stuff like that. Linux on the server corporate world, Linux as a development station and stuff like that. Never workstation, what have you not. Never said anything about that. That's still great. The thing is, all of those things are not your home desktop. So it don't matter how great Linux is on supercomputers or on the server market or on IoT. Heck, it don't even matter if every refrigerator in the world that is cooling your sex robot down and sex toys down is running Linux, because that's not your desktop. Is it fascinating that these kind of things run Linux? Yeah. But it's not your desktop. You don't use it to game on. You don't use them to sit and watch, you know, Pornhub and YouTube and, you know, talk to hentai fans all over the world or anime fans or whatever the fuck you guys are into nowadays. That's not your desktop. That's the part of Linux that I think is massively dropped on the floor. The state of how it is today, the state of how the community is, the state or the direction that 99% of open source development and Linux development is going, is telling us that Linux desktop is almost not thought about. A little bit, but not a lot. All major open source projects, Debian, SUSE, OpenSUSE, Red Hat, Fedora, Canonical, they are all catered, most of their effort, to anything but the Linux desktop. Meaning servers, corporate market, stuff like that. Yes, do the thing about the Linux desktop a little bit. I will. Again, this is not a scientific fact or anything like that. It's just like me spewing out some numbers from my experience. It'll be like, it's like maybe 90%, you know, servers, corporate tools, and stuff like that. And then 10% they focus on you and me that use Linux as a desktop. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but about that ballpark, okay? That's not a good sign if we are not that big of a focus. And it's been like this for 30 plus years. And I know a lot of people say, what about Valve? What about Proton? Look at Proton. Look at Valve's history. Proton was made not for the Linux desktop, but for Steam Deck. Does it benefit the Linux desktop? Yes. Am I happy they're doing it? Yes. But here's something that you can kind of count on. If the Steam Deck is massively flopping, and the jury is still out. They only sold like about 1 million devices, which is not fucking much compared to 12 million in a year that, you know, Nintendo sells. But if the Steam Deck end up being something they can make money on, that's not what the indicators say. It seems like it's a popular device, but if it ends up just being, you know, the honeymoon phase, I mean, that's over, everyone's dropping it. There is a massive possibility that they would drop anything to do with Proton. They've done it before. They've tried to do this 2 or 3 times already, and after investing 2 or 3 years into each time they tried it, they dropped it. They dropped supporting it for many years. But they are not doing it for this big box that I have standing over here you have. They're just using that as a development station, basically. What they really are focusing on is the Steam Deck. So, more than likely, and this is the history with Valve, you will see more focus being put into stuff that makes sense to make the Steam Deck better. You don't see Valve going out and helping making VLC run better. You don't see Valve doing much with KDE, GNOME, XFCE. You don't see Valve doing much with any technologies that don't benefit Valve either directly or indirectly. Anything. Valve do what they need to do. That's Valve philosophy through their whole existence as a company. They do the absolute minimum they need to do to not get in trouble. They are anti-consumer, like way more anti-consumer than anything you can think of. And the only thing that good old God Gable cares about is a good old mighty dollar. And for you a cash cow. He's milking your tits every fucking day. Now he's just milking it on Linux also. Valve is a way worse company than Microsoft and Apple combined, when you think about it as a consumer. And if you think about it as someone being on their store. They're not good, but they are doing something for Linux and people like that. So they kind of forget all about that. And why there's this like, oh, they did it because they don't want to be logged into the Microsoft store. Why do you think that is? That's because they have no control over what's going on in the Microsoft store. But they have control over what's going on with Linux. They can get away with shit under Linux. They can't get away with if they were logged into the Microsoft store. Valve has a lot of antitrust things going on. Actually, right now there's lawsuits against Valve for monopoly-like behavior and anti-consumer and anti-competitive behavior. There are no real Linux desktop-focused distributions that are worth thinking about. There's maybe one, Mint. Maybe Mint. But that's one out of how many fucking there's about 1,000 distributions on DistroWatch, and there is only one kind of popular desktop distribution. There are a lot of them trying to do it, you know, Grad, even though they are fucking batshit crazy in their brains. We have Elementary OS that's almost kind of fucking dead because they seem to not understand what Linux is missing, so they are taking a already not broken but not satisfying base Ubuntu, and then they are basically putting a beautiful dress on it and think, oh, look, Linux is now ready for the mass consumer market. When Linux's UIs and Linux's desktop environments has never been the problem. I can take my mom and almost anyone from the street and plop them in front of a KDE install, and they will probably find their way around it in 10 to 30 minutes and be happy with it. Heck, if you're a Mac user, you can probably easily use GNOME or XFCE. XFCE is kind of both for Mac and Windows users. The desktop environment have never been the problem with Linux. It's everything else. It's peripherals. It's support for all kind of things that people want. It's helping developers work with Linux, like proprietary developers work with open source developers under Linux. There is the problem. But you see all of these Linux distributions out there being nothing more than a pig with a lipstick on, where they are focusing on something that is not a problem under Linux. We don't need a new desktop environment. We don't. We don't need more beautiful applications. That is not going to get people to use Linux more. What is going to get people to use Linux is if stuff like this and, you know, Adobe Photoshop, Autodesk, all of these software that people really want to run work under Linux. So why are we not focusing on that? Look at what software do most desktop users use under Windows. What is like the top 30 software that they use? A web browser, we are really good at web browsing. We're really good at web browsing. But look at like the top 30, 50, 100 apps that people use on Windows and Mac OS. Why not have a plan to get all of those to work natively under Linux or via our emulation layer flawlessly? No tinkering, no hacking, no updates that breaks and stuff like that. If you can do that, Linux will have a bright future. But that's hard. That's difficult. So what do people do instead? They pretty up XFCE, they pretty up KDE. They go and make their, if they're a little bit more advanced and they have a little bit more skill, they make their own desktop environment like Elementary OS and Pop OS. But it's just making, you know, instead of putting a dress on a pig, we are making our dress and giving it to the pig to put on. They're still not focusing on the fundamental issues, and that's why I gave up on the desktop. It's because we all have been focused on, let's make it look nice, let's make it function nice, not function, that's the wrong word, let the user experience from a desktop viewpoint look nice and feel nice. So we are trying to go the Apple approach without having nearly the compatibility that Apple have with peripherals and software. So it won't matter. If someone wants Photoshop, just using it as an example, I don't think if Linux got Photoshop, it will matter at all, because we don't need one program. We need the ecosystems of Windows and Mac OS on Linux, meaning we need like I said, the top 100 programs or something like that to work under Linux. So, but I'm just using Photoshop here as an example. If people want Photoshop, they don't want GIMP, they don't want Quitza, even though they may be better or as good. If people want Photoshop, they want Photoshop. If you want Air Jordans, you don't want knockoffs. Even if they are as good, as comfortable, you want Air Jordans. If you want an Armani suit, you don't want a knockoff or a copy of it. Even though it could be cheaper or free and as good, you want Armani. Because not only is there like a brand associated with it, known support, known training, you know, all of these things. You don't buy Adobe for Photoshop. You buy Adobe for Photoshop and the ecosystem and the training that comes with it. The accessibility to provable certified workers that you can hire. Or that you can get a job doing Photoshop because you can get certified and stuff like that. That's why people like Photoshop. Not because it's really that good. It's all of the other things that comes with it. And that seems to be missing from the Linux community or Linux understanding of the Linux desktop. They think that, well, GIMP should be just as good, or you should just use GIMP, or you should just use LibreOffice, or you should just put alternative software in here. No, they don't really buy, you know, AutoCAD. They buy everything that comes with AutoCAD. That's why they like it. They don't like Photoshop. They like the Photoshop ecosystem, the Adobe ecosystem, the accessibility to provable, easy testing workforce and stuff like that, and easy access to training material and so on and so on and so on. The Linux desktop people, they are too focused on, okay, Photoshop, let's make a photo editor. AutoCAD, let's make FreeCAD. Even though FreeCAD has come a long way and is being accepted by a lot of working communities nowadays. But you get what I'm saying here. But instead they're like, okay, let's just make Linux look like Windows or make it look like Mac OS, or let's make Linux a little bit more stable, let's make it a little bit more secure. They don't really care about that because Windows and Mac OS is already secure enough. If you know how to work with Windows and Mac OS, you can make it just as secure as Linux. And we seem to forget this under Linux. That's what this video is about. It's about I can't support a system that seems to not understand the difference between a server and a desktop. They don't seem to understand that people are not saying that Linux sucks or Windows sucks because of the UI. They don't say that Windows sucks because they're running Adobe. So try and make Linux not suck with the things that Windows sucks at. And we don't. We put lipstick on a pig. All Linux distributions as a desktop operating system all have the same issues. And that's a warning sign. If all the effort, or 99 or 80% of the effort, or 90% of the effort on the Linux desktop is put into wallpapers, themes, let's make a new UI or desktop, and not fixing the problem that they all have, should be a warning sign for a critical thinker or an intelligent person, if you ask me. Because they're not fixing the underlying issue. It's like putting band-aids on cancer and think it will go away. It won't work that way, friends. And until the Linux community understand that and start to help working towards that. And I know, what can we do? Put money into it, you know, make up like a GoFundMe or a trust to help, you know, Adobe be ported over to Linux. Put developers, again, I'm just using Adobe as an example, it could be whatever company or product you want. Give Adobe developers. So if you want Adobe and they don't want to spend their time, you know what? We will sign an NDA, we will do whatever the fuck you want if you allow us to help you make Adobe worthwhile on Linux. And I know, it goes against, should all be open source. No, it should not. They spend billions of dollars doing Adobe. Let them decide what fucking license they want. This whole thing about forcing everything to be one license because of freedom and openness of the code makes no sense. It don't matter if it's open or closed source, because nobody, not nobody, but 9 out of 10 people are not going to do anything with it anyway. So why the fuck should it be forced on us? Just because you think this is a better strategy. Help them out. Advocate. Put them lobbyists into Adobe to lobby for Linux or whatever company you want. Make it easier for them to work with open source software. You know, give them a more allowance to be part of this ecosystem and not be like, either you do it our way or you fuck this out of here. That mentality has never worked in the world, especially not for someone that's this small. It will work for Microsoft, it will work for the, Apple. It will not work for someone that barely has any footing in the industry they're trying to change. So let's work together. Let's help them help us. Then I will start to believe in the Linux desktop. See you all later. Bye bye.